Hi again, this is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com, and today's podcast conversation is part 2 of a 3-part conversation with Mark Yearby from Mark One Consulting on the topic of the role of change management within customer success management. Part 1 is already available, so if you've not already viewed or listened to part 1, I recommend you stop this recording and go to part 1 first, and then this is part 2, which takes off from where part 1 ended, for a further 20 minutes or so of our conversation. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm not going to say it's easy, because it isn't. It takes hard work, and it takes proper planning, and it takes commitment by the leadership team and the managers within the business to get them through that. But they must recognize it's all about the people. The process, whatever the new process happens to be, is almost irrelevant. It's all about the people. Get them through that process, manage them through that process. They'll get there, and they will become your best advocate for that change. And they'll make them more resilient for the next time a change happens, because they will attach a positive sense to it.
Okay.
So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. Absolutely, most definitely makes total sense. And I think we could perhaps say that by and large, change can be both a challenge and an opportunity.
Oh, completely. Yes. And what you make of it.
Right. And it is a challenge that if not met can cause severe business problems, including obviously, the business failing. So it's very, very important. And there is nothing as important as the people within any business. Any business is only as good as its people. Okay, it cannot be any better. No. It can only be as good as its people. So if its people are not performing well, then the business is not performing well. I mean, this is just obvious, right? It's not.
Absolutely.
No one's going to disagree with that. So we need people to perform well. Change. Actually, what we change from and to are from state A to state B, and that includes products and solutions and processes and tasks and activities. But actually, all of those things require people to do them. So, there's someone who performs the activity. There's someone who follows the process. So we've got, if you like, in any, and this is how we break it down in my customer success management training, when we talk about how businesses work, we talk about capabilities. Right, so so any business is a collection of capabilities, abilities to get stuff done.
Yeah,
and any capability comprises 3 bits: the people, the process, and the tools. The people who do it, the process they follow, and the things that they use, the tools. So when you break that down, effectively what we're saying is when we're, as a business, when we're planning for change internally, we're talking internally here, which is obviously not something that customer success managers are used to. They're used to thinking about their customers' business. So we're talking inside our company. So our senior team have got together and had a meeting and said COVID-19, new legal requirements, also new health and safety requirements, also we a new environment in terms of our customers' demands on us and all the rest of it. We're going to react. So we're going to come out with a strategy, and we're going to then pass that down to the different functions, and the functions of the business are going to say, okay, well, if that's the new strategy, so for example, you've got to do what you're already doing, but you've got to find a way where your team can do it from home. So they're all going to have to remote work, but do as well as they're doing already. So then the functional heads, they then scratch their heads and think, well, how do I do that? So they actually so the strategy, if you like, overall comes from the top of the company. At the top of the mid-level, at the functional head level, you've got the managers of that function or that unit determining how to actually fulfill on that strategy. In other words, what will be the new process and what will be the new tools we use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay?
And this is absolutely critical.
Right. And then that leaves the third bit, like a 3-legged stool, right? If you take one leg away from a 3-legged stool, you will fall over. Okay?
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the process and tools. The third bit is the people, and that is the change management bit. So I don't know if that sort of helps people just in terms of what we're talking about here. And particularly, Mark, because we are aiming our conversation, just because of the nature of who I am and what I do, who this goes out to, at customer success managers who are looking at this from an outside perspective. How do I make sure that they're using my product well? So the product is one of those three parts of the stool, okay? But it is not necessarily the most important part for the customer to get right. And what I'm suggesting is that where customer success management, is slightly different, is it's more product focus. Okay, because of the nature of the customer success manager who comes from the product supplier into the customer organization to help them with that aspect of managing the change in order to get the outcome. Actually, the customer success manager, I believe, should also be embracing the people aspects, the change management aspects, because that is the advice and the guidance that is equally, if not more important, to be providing to the customer organization. Any thoughts?
I completely agree. I mean, there's going to be a case where, we can look at the internal operations of the business and how the internal business, the employees of the business are being managed through the change. But let's not forget, although the customer expectations may not have changed, we may need the customer success manager to start managing expectations of the customer. So, look, we are putting such and such a process in place. It may take a little longer for you to answer the call. Most people are going to be okay with that, provided they feel part of the process and they understand what's going on, but they need to be helped. Again, it's managing people through the change, managing expectations. That's absolutely, it's crucial. And that's where...
And particularly at a time when people are anxious because they're not at their best anyway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Completely. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. It's Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com here. Just wanted to let you know that myself and my friend Peter Armley from Oracle, will be doing a webinar on December the 16th at 8:15 in the morning if you're Pacific time, 11:15 if you're East Coast, 4:15 p.m. if you're UK, 5:15 if you are in Central Europe time. The webinar is entitled, What Should the Customer Success Function Do? And Peter and I will have a 30-minute conversation on that topic, followed by a 15-minute Q&A with yourselves, whoever is attending. You are very welcome to come along and join. To register, go to practicalcsm.com/strategy. practicalcsm.com/strategy. And we'll be covering things like the purpose of customer success management, the origins of it, where it came from, the core aspects of the customer success role, generically, but also then how to determine the specific requirements for your customer success team and put that into action. So what should the customer success function do with myself and Peter Armley, December the 16th, in the morning for US, in the afternoon for UK and Europe. practicalcsm.com/strategy to register. Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's step back now, talk a little bit about the theory behind change management. So as I understand it, Mark, you're saying that there are three possible approaches that a company might take to change, which is no change management, ignore the problem, reactive change management, we'll deal with it when it happens, and proactive change management, we'll deal with it ahead of time. So can you explain a little bit about what you mean by this and which approach is the recommended one, which I think we can probably work out. But talk to us about that.
Okay, so the net zero change management approach, that is what I like to call Ostrich Syndrome, where we bury our head in the sand and pretend that everything's fine and it'll all go away. And let's be clear, there are businesses at the moment who have done this and they're now paying the price for it. Okay, that is where people's performance degrades, and as such, business performance degrades massively. Customers, they will tolerate it to a point, but only up to a point, and then they'll start to go elsewhere. And we've already discussed the importance of customer retention at the moment. If you're going to do nothing about it, you are rolling the dice with your customer retention.
And your best employees too, right?
And your best employees. And you will see people leave in their droves, and the employees you will be left with may not be the ones you want to be left with.
No, they're the ones who can't get a job anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So you are rolling the dice with your business. If you're in a position to be able to do that and come out of it smiling the other side, you know what? Buy yourself a lottery ticket or head over to Vegas for the weekend and have a ball. Reactive change management is where a lot of organizations got to with COVID, because although, let's be honest, at the very beginning of the back end of last year, beginning of this year, we were aware of something kicking off in China that was virus related. We didn't really know a lot about it, and we thought, it doesn't really affect us. It's over there somewhere. We didn't do a lot. And then the pandemic arrived, and next thing you know, we're in lockdown, and business was like, oh, what do I do? Now, sometimes things do come out of left field, okay, but we have to react quickly.
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt you again, but I mean, I think, with COVID-19, I think it's an example of where reactive project management is probably almost appropriate in the sense absolutely. That it did come from nowhere. But if there was a new piece of legislation that was going to be coming into effect at the beginning of 2022, for the sake of argument, it's a new, a new European directive. We're not in Europe anymore, are we? In the UK, I am. I'm in Ireland at the moment. New piece of legislation. Doesn't matter. Let's not get bogged down in the details. Comes into effect at the beginning of 2022. Here we are, coming towards the end of 2020. That's the proactive bit, right? Where you're then going to say, right, let's think now about what we need to do in the future, right?
Well, let's be honest. I mean, we've had a very similar situation with Brexit, for example. I mean, picking a contentious subject. We all knew that we were going to have to change how we do business. We all knew that trade between the UK and the EU may not be as easy as it was before. We may find that bringing people in to, do what jobs we need them to do may be more challenging. We have absolutely had the opportunity to plan for that, to investigate how it will affect our business. We may well have been able to look at our processes and say, what does this mean for how we do business? What does this mean for our people? How are they going to be able to do business? Is it going to affect their job role in any way? Do we need to retrain? Do we need to invest in more infrastructure? How are we going to change? And then we can start to plan for that. Now, as I've alluded to before, people need to feel part of the solution, okay? We can't just impose a change on them and expect them to go, brilliant. Yeah, I'm okay. The likelihood is they're not going to be. They may not say it, but they're not necessarily going to be over the moon about it as soon as they walk in on Monday morning and find that their job role has changed. They're not going to be happy with that. So the whole thing needs to be planned, and people need to be brought on board. Regular communication needs to go out to what it actually means to them. Honest communication. So if an employee goes to their line manager and says, what does this mean for me? And the line manager's like, I don't know. Don't lie. Don't make it up. Just say, you know what? I don't know at this point in time. There's a meeting next week, next month, where we're going to be discussing this sort of thing. Give me a couple of days, give me a couple of weeks, whatever. I will get back to you as and when I have an answer. Or it may just be a case of, it's not appropriate for me to talk about that right now because the business hasn't decided. Be honest. They'll go along with it for the most part. So this is where proactive change management comes in. It's the active forward planning of what it means to the business, what it means to its employees, what it might mean to its customers. How will its customers be impacted by this change? We've seen instances of, new ordering systems being put in place to make life easier for the business. The customers phoned up to place an order, and it's turned into an absolute nightmare because it's been made easier for the business, but it's actually not easier for the customer. So these things need to be factored in and considered. And as when we were talking about the definitions right at the very beginning of this call, we talked about a systematic and a structured approach. That's how you proactively manage change. A systematic approach, it means it goes across the business, across the people, all the different stakeholders, and it's structured. There are clear objectives in place that are managed, and people are managed to help them achieve those objectives. They're given tasks to do, little mini objectives, if you like, and it's step by step by step by step by step. And people will see progress. Go for your easy wins. We all talk about easy wins. Go for the easy wins. Get a sense of momentum behind it. But these easy wins need to be planned. So it's all about the planning. And that's, let's be honest, that's what management is. It's planning and then doing.
Yeah, well, yes, I guess deciding on the direction and then planning for it, and then, as you say, implementing those plans.
And it's the execution.
And the deciding which direction to go is critical. The deciding how you're going to do it, i.e. the planning, is critical, and then the implementing that plan is critical. So all three aspects again of management and leadership coming together, combining. Like again, yet another three-legged stool of which, if one leg goes, you're going to be on your bum on the ground again. So, okay. From a practical perspective, then, if a company decides to be proactive in their approach to managing change, what types of things can a business do ahead of time during the planning stages to create those meaningful plans for change ahead of the change occurring, such that they are able to do what we want to have happen? The benefits of this, obviously, is we're minimizing the impact of the change in terms of the disruption, the quality of the service, the productivity, and so on. So what sorts of practical things can be done during the planning stages?
The very first, though, is actually understand, as you just mentioned, the impact of the change. What does it mean? It's not something that the leadership team can necessarily take on board exclusively on their own, because they will need input from other parts of the organization. So start bringing people in. It's not related to a job title per se. It's about who's got the expertise to actually look at what the impacts might be. So you want to get a broad spectrum of views from key people within the organization. So if you're changing a particular process, don't just talk to the manager of that particular department. Go and talk to the person who's actually running the process. Find out what he thinks it might mean, because he will probably give you more insight than anybody else will, because he's the person who's got to live with it. He's got to live with the impact of it. So it really is and that is part of the impact assessment. What's the impact of doing it? What's the risk in doing it? So start looking at basic risk assessments. What is the risk of the change? If it's a high risk but low impact, well, do we want to change? Do we want to cause a lot of disruption? That's a question that often doesn't get asked. Sometimes it probably should be. So it's about balancing, looking for that balance. But it starts with the impact assessment. What does it mean for the business? What does it mean for the people? How will the impact affect them? What's the level of impact? What's the level of disruption? And then start put together your plan. So we know where we want to get to, i.e. end state. What are the stages in between? What does that actually look like? Do we need a new CRM? Do we need infrastructure? Do we need capital expenditure? Do we need to just tweak a process? Do we need to bring on another head? Do we need to redeploy within other parts of the organization? Each one of those is effectively a mini impact assessment and a mini risk assessment. And that can all be brought together into a cohesive plan. That then needs to be communicated at regular stages. It should have a guiding team. Not necessarily all members of the senior leadership team, but the guiding team should encompass people from different areas of the organisation that are going to be affected. They should be empowered. They need the support of the senior leadership team, but they need to be empowered to actually make the changes necessary, so they're not banging heads with each other in other departments. And critically, plan for communication. Everybody talks about communication a lot, but you need to think about what you're communicating, who you're communicating it to, the relevance of, and the frequency, and also detail, because certain people in the organization, they don't need a lot of detail. So management teams, they will probably need a hell of a lot of detail, but the next level down may not need quite so much.
And also in terms of timing, the management team might well need more advanced notification compared to the people on the ground who may not actually not benefit from knowing in so far in advance.
Yeah, definitely. So when we talk about communication, that's what we mean. It's plan your communication, have a communication strategy. That can all be done in ahead. No plan is set in stone. It can be tweaked and adjusted as more knowledge is acquired about what the change means, or as more information is gathered. But, get your guiding team in place, do your impact assessments, do your risk assessments, and keep the team moving. Though you start doing that, it becomes a lot easier, rather than everybody running around like Chicken Little thinking the sky's falling in.
Okay. So, and a good point that you make there is that, the perfect plan, probably doesn't exist for certainly in complex situations, where we've just said like change is the new normal. So by the time you've written the plan, right, the stuff you wrote at the beginning of it probably needs updating now.
Yeah.
And so by the time you implement it, it'll be out of date anyway. So because things keep moving, okay, and also of course some things we are going to know for sure. And some things we're going to have to make assumptions.
Absolutely.
And as we move forwards, we're going to learn more. And as we learn more, we may uncover things where we made inaccurate, incorrect assumptions. And so, of course, we need to adapt. So I think that's a really good point that you make, is that what we need is a balance of having a high enough quality, detailed enough plan that enables us to move forwards where everybody knows what needs to be done and how to do it, but at the same time maintaining enough flexibility within that plan to understand and recognize that however good what was written might have looked at the time, we now recognize the need to do it differently to that and can adapt.
Absolutely.
So
there's no reason why you can't, as a kind of subset of that plan, actually write in key assumptions, because you're going to have to assume
absolutely
something. Yeah. And if people know what your assumptions are and what they're based on, they can then have got an avenue to say, not sure you're right with that one. And the plans adapt. I mean, to use a military parlance, no plan survives first contact.
Absolutely.
It should be a living document, and it will change and evolve. As long as the objective remains the same, the vision remains the same, you'll get there.
And almost, we could argue that the process of planning is as important as the plan itself, for the reasons just spoken.
Yeah.
But just to bring this back to customer success management, if you're interested, anyone listening, is that what we've been talking about is exactly what is in the training in the Certified CSM Professional Program, where we go through how you, as a customer success manager, engage with the customer stakeholders and start talking about their capabilities, their impacted users, both the directly impacted, people who are going to be using your product, and the indirectly impacted, which could be people who are using the outputs from the people who are using your product that also have changed, and therefore they're doing something slightly differently or doing it in a different way or whatever because of that knock-on effect within the organization, and thinking about, well, what's the current knowledge level, what the current skills are, what the current attitude towards things are, and what needs to be the knowledge and the skills and the attitude of these impacted users, and how we're going to get from A to B, how we're going to get from the as is to the to be, the gap analysis, what is the gap, and then the plan to fulfill that gap. That's the change management plan that Mark has been talking about. And that, again, there's how to do that, and the process, the tools are all in the Certified CSM Professional Program. So just if you're interested in that from a customer success perspective, so this is all, to me, completely making sense as to what needs to be done. All right, good. All right, so let's talk about moving from the planning stages to the implementation stages, which I always think of, in fact, as moving from the use of change management best practice principles to the use of project management best practice principles, in the sense that now we've embedded the change management best practice into the plan. That's what helped us plan, because we understood what change management best practice was. That's why we've put these things into the plan. Now we've got to actually make the plan work. Okay, so that is the end of part 2, and part 3 will be available next week to complete the full set. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when new videos get released, or go to practicalcsm.com and fill out the membership form to be kept updated with all sorts of free customer success related content and discounted training offers.